Welcome to the newest episode of On the Odd. If you have a story you would like to share and you would like to come onto the show to share it, please email me at mark@ontheodd.com.
From the paranormal to the extraordinary, from the weird to the wonderful, this is On the Odd.
Your whispers always wake me. I hear them clearly, not completely.
Today I have a very special guest. His name is CT Tyler, and I came across CT's work on Facebook. It was sent to me by a couple dear friends of mine. I'll just refer to them as Angie, D, and Kelly. Three women who follow the phenomenon that I refer to simply as, or the world really refers to it as, Q. I used to call it Q Anon, but I think that's the old way of going about it. But Q is the new way of just referring to it. And CT, you have a number of followers that are continuing more and more to follow your dissection of the Q releases. And I just welcome you to the show, CT. How are you?
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time today. I know you're very busy. And you even said, like, as soon as I spoke to you, it's like there's so much stuff that gets released almost nightly, I'm going to say, especially in the past few weeks.
Yep.
I guess first and foremost, I just wanted to ask, who are you in this whole thing? Like, how did you kind of fall into this world of Q Anon? And and if you could even give a dummy, dummies like me who are very new to it,
Right.
who basically, I still have in my right ear and across the room, I have CNN telling me that Q is an alt-right movement by the KKK.
Right.
And then
Right.
I look at it and I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Nothing about this has anything to do with that.
Right.
Q doesn't, I don't know if Q has a side. I'm going to say it's a,
Yep.
if it's a side, it's a new side. It's
No,
like the fifth column.
No, yeah, it's exactly what it is. And it's interesting that you mentioned, the polarization, and how CNN is chalking it up as a, right wing, conspiracy theory,
Right.
dangerous people, blah blah blah. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason that they're painting that picture because, Q, and we'll get into it a little bit, but it is. It's a completely other, I guess, different kind of beast. Right. And doesn't affiliate with Democrats or Republicans. It's on the side of truth and on the side of looking at every single day that we live, not only as Americans but just as a citizen of the world.
I find comfort with that. I find
Yeah.
comfort with the fact that this person isn't choosing Coke or Pepsi.
Correct.
This person is just saying, this is what it is. And
Yeah.
this is, and even though like some of these predictions scare the hell out of me because it's like 18 months ahead of time.
Right.
I mean, I know people are even getting, I do another podcast called On the Odd where we talk about more fringe things, and people are now getting onto this topic of time travel. And
Yep.
I'm like, all right, well, I love that topic and I love the science behind it and the philosophies, but trying to remain as grounded as possible in the world of politics, I want to avoid it, but I cannot.
Right.
I cannot possibly say that it's that easy
Not
to predict.
related. Yeah.
18 months ahead of time.
Yeah, it's the logistics are mind-boggling. And we can cover that. We can cover that side too a little bit. But I think for what I'm guessing your intents and purposes are for this particular interview is more of a, an opening, sort of like a 101, as opposed to let's just, hop into the, the the PhD level, Q phenomenon. So it's kind of all.
Well, I don't want to bore you with it all.
No, not hey.
I mean,
bored at all.
Well, here's the thing. If I think that if you could explain precisely what it's hard to say, but if you could explain what Q is or what it is.
Yeah.
Is it a movement? Is it a person? Is it, is it a group? We unsure.
Yeah. So to answer your first question with regards to, who I am, I take the path that all of us that have been following this intently, should be taking, which is I am no one. I'm not anybody of consequence. I'm just a person, on the same journey as all these other people to try to find out what exactly is real. And that to me is, paramount for not anybody that follows this particular phenomenon, but it should be life in general. If we have been so conditioned, which, my opinion is that we have, to simply accept everything that's put in front of us as fact and not question anything, I don't think we are living up to the potential as human beings that we were meant to be. And I think that is by design, and that's what we're, that's really why this thing is catching on. So myself personally, I'm just a person, okay. I'm an anon. I don't want credit. I don't want, publicity. All I want is for people to just take a look at themselves, look into what Q is, and ask themselves some questions. And that is sort of the basis, the cornerstone for how Q operates. And I'll cover that in just a minute. But QAnon is all. It's all of the above. It's a person. It's actually a group of people. We know that. And I guess I should throw the disclaimer out there. Most of what I'll probably talk about is none of it is 100% true, because we don't know what it is, Okay. So a lot of it is interpretation, which is where oftentimes it's a pitfall, so to speak, or has been a pitfall. Anytime the media or somebody that is very just sort of an anti-believer, so to speak, that's the first thing they go for is, well, what's been done? What is, all these things, they'll say all these things that, they're paraphrased Q posts, which are usually incorrect. They'll say like, Q said these people were supposed to be arrested by now. And you're like, no, that never happened. Show me on the doll where this happened.
Right. There are very broad interpretations.
Yes.
And
yes, exactly.
I like the way that you approach it, though, because you have I think maybe this is why you have a base that's growing, is because you are looking at it for what it is, but you're also saying this may or may not happen today, tomorrow, or ever.
Right. Yeah, and again, back to that, I don't even really pay too much attention to that. All I care about is that people are listening to themselves, not to me, and that's a big thing that I'll continue to reemphasize even within this, is that you shouldn't really ever follow anybody. You should follow yourself. I'm a firm believer in God. God plays a huge part in this game as you start to advance into what Q is, from a spiritual perspective. And I guess I would consider myself a Christian, but it's not confined to that. And that's, again, one of the grand appeals of Q is that it doesn't have this direct affiliation with one specific thing, because again, we all, you said yourself, you're Jewish yourself. That doesn't exclude you, right?
Right.
So that's the thing that I think is really, really important that we continue to emphasize, is that everybody is welcome to look into this and investigate and to think for themselves. It is funny because you find it from these, again, the same people that are anti-Q will, call it a cult. Well,
Right.
It's the only cult. It's the only cult that I know. It's the only cult that I know of where we advocate thinking for yourself. So I mean,
right. And there's no money plaping tossing around.
No. Exactly. We're not.
And I'm not putting down anybody's
Kool-Aid
beliefs, of course.
Right.
It's like if that's what you do and that's what you enjoy doing,
right.
that I could care less. But
Precisely.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's crazy. It's do you think, and this is a little bit of a weird question, but do you think that with it's hard because if we look back, I'm going to say, well, I'm 46. I don't know how old you are, but if we were to go back 10 years, all right, I'm 36. It was a different universe, you know, and politics, everything. People were okay. You could watch TV shows that were created 10 years ago and go, this show can never be created. It used to be. It used to take 40 or 50 years for that to happen.
Right.
Now it's taking a decade.
Yeah.
Less than a decade even. So I'm just kind of. Do you see yourself becoming maybe even more religious because of this?
Religious? No. Spiritual? Absolutely.
Okay. I really envelope them together personally.
And a lot of people do. Okay. And to be honest with you, so I'll go back and I'll hit on this just really quick so people, if they are new to it, so they understand what it is that we're talking about. I know,
we're taking one of those rabbit holes. I'm sorry.
It's a very circuitous route. Nice job, Magellan. So in essence, Q it's a group of people. We believe them to be military intelligence. We believe this to be a plan that is being executed in order to sort of slow drip the awareness of the world. It's called the Great Awakening, in which people start to do exactly what we're doing, which is having dialogue, asking questions, thinking for ourselves, doing things we have not done in a very long time, things that we've actually been conditioned to not do, right? You think about just standard practices in school. How much are we actually in just focused on listening and repeating as opposed to critical thinking?
Sure.
And that's a microcosm of what we're looking at here. But that's what they're attempting to do. They're trying to bring awareness to the world, and they're doing it through something that's called the Socratic method, which is obviously based off of Socrates, where the best way to teach somebody something is to not tell them something. It's to do exactly what we're talking about, which is sort of look within, ask yourself these questions and, follow it up. Why is it this way? Okay, you think it's that. Why is it that? And once you do that, you really can start to use an analogy the other day of you start with sort of a piece of wood, right? And you start to whittle it down until it becomes an image, until it becomes something. Right. And sometimes we don't know what that final image is going to be, but it doesn't stop us from chipping away.
Sure.
And once you've gotten to that piece that you think it's accurate and you can't really whittle it anymore, then you move on to the next thing. And for me, I have found that process has been really helpful, as far as gaining clarity and also not being closed-minded, Again, you think back to the society you mentioned even like 10 years ago and where we are right now is you have this huge sect of people that are just, no, their heads are down, their blinders are on. They're very, very focused on their thing. And if it's not their thing, it's not worth listening to.
Right. It's nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why you have this friction between Democrats and Republicans, because they're so focused on the task at hand being morally correct that they're not willing to accept the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there's something else to it. And so that's what the basic process is. Q has been feeding message boards. It started on a message board called 4chan. And it started on October 28th of 2017. And I was made aware of it actually 2 days later. So I didn't follow it, the very first day, but it was pretty close. And, you're reading this stuff and it was like nothing I'd ever read before. it was asking all these questions, and it was hitting on these topics that were very sexy.
But it was
Sexy
also
topics,
clear that it was a new topic, right?
Very clear. Oh yeah, I mean, the absolute, people will say certain things about 4chan and 8chan, which is where Q currently posts, as being.
By the way, if you're gonna go to 4chan or 8chan, go to 4chan.org, not .com, especially if you have children.
Yeah, and I would emphasize maybe not delving even into that just yet. It's a pretty dangerous place. There's a lot of people that are on there right now that are maybe not don't have the best intentions.
Well, go there with a thick skin.
Exactly. Definitely, yeah.
Especially if you're Jewish.
Exactly. If you're easily offended, and again, that goes back to the premise of why they're doing it there.
But 4chan is a weird place. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just
Very
wanted,
weird.
if I could just mention something about 4chan. 4chan originally, I've done my own fair share of computer manipulation years and years ago. And 4chan originally started out, at least with my use of it, is trading and swapping code. And that, and it was really, really a stripped down website, and it still is. So I don't know why or when it happened, because I walked away from it for a number of years, but it became this crazy political place, and it was never that before. And I feel as though personally, there are a lot of fakers on 4chan. I'm less of an 8chan user, but you go there and there's no way there are this many hateful people in the world. This is here to trigger people who are normal or semi-normal,
Yeah, part of the, and I don't know the entire history of 4 and 8, and I won't pretend to be, the historian of the guy that was on there from day one. I'm a 2-year noob basically with regards to it, but I've done a fair amount of research regarding, how things sort of evolved. And yes, 4chan essentially is, the thing they kind of look at themselves as is sort of the last, the Wild West of free speech.
What we thought, and then
exactly, yeah. And so, so it started on the poll, sort of sub, and
like subreddit, like for people who
just like a subreddit,
Reddit,
exactly. Yep. And evolved into.
Which stay away from Reddit, by the way. Reddit is.
I'm not gonna advocate or denounce any particular place, but that
I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Individual interpretation. But anyways, yeah. So it evolved, and actually one of the things that sparked it was something called Gamergate, which it kills me to think about what happened with this particular thing, and it happened to be with. Like you said, it was a coding, place people to go to, trade code and stuff. And it eventually, evolved into certain subs, like we said. And, one of the things was these video game nerds were very, hey, I'm one of them, though. That's what I always like to say. At the end of the day, the history books will show that a bunch of video game nerds saved the world. And it's a very dumbed down version of what is real. But in any case, so they went in and they found that this particular game was getting ratings that it was not supposed to get, right? And as we know, ratings help the sales of any particular product. And you go to IGN or whatever, and you're like, oh, this Zelda got a 10. I'm going to get that game because they said it was good, right? And they found a particular game, I can't remember which one it was, that was getting extremely good ratings. And they're like, this game sucks. Why is this? And they started to look into it. And what they found was a connection between the games. It was somebody that was working within a particular review website and somebody affiliated with the production team.
Unbelievable.
There was sort of under the table, antics between this female and this male in order to get the game. And that's where it evolved. That's how it started. And then they they looked into all of these different, crazy schemes like the Shia LaBeouf, He Will Not Divide Us, flag game.
That was amazing. I mean, they tracked down the location based upon the constellation.
Yes, and that was when my eyes started to become open to who these people were. and why we should listen, right? Because again, you have this thing that exists in the world today that is personalities, talking heads, people on TV telling you what to do or what a thing is. We have begun to simply accept whatever it is that they say as truth. We have forgotten to challenge. And whenever you have that, you're dealing in ego, right? You're dealing with a persona and a person that is, that may or may not be trying to sell you something. And with 4chan and 8chan, it's anonymous. So you have no choice but to use your own discernment on whether whatever this person is saying is true or not. And it was this animal that was created where they're like, they call it a LARP. It stands for live action role play. Mm-hmm. And, because you could go on there right now and you could say, hey, this is President Trump. Guess what? I'm going to lock all these people up tomorrow, and you would have all of these people saying that's BS. Here's why. Prove it. Right. And they'll do it in, not so nice terms. But again, they operate under this freedom of speech sort of, mantra. Mm-hmm. Right. And which, again, right, wrong, or indifferent, just because something is, maybe hurts your feelings doesn't make it not free speech. Right. And that's kind of where they operate. And so yeah, it's this thing where you now have this faceless entity that is coming in and it's just disclosing all of these crazy things. And you're like, how is this real? Okay, I need to look at this, because again, Q is saying things in sort of coded.
Absolutely. It's very cryptic.
Yep. And so you say, okay, what do you mean by this? And what the fascinating thing about it is, Q lives in quintuple entendres. It's unbelievable. They'll say a thing like think united, right? Which again, you think, oh, we should be combined. We should be, focused on, helping each other. And then literally the next day, a United plane crash happens in which the engine blows up and it has to make an emergency landing in Hawaii. That's a real story. It's almost a full year ago, actually. I think it was February 14th, I think. But yeah, so you have these sort of Nostradamus-like interpretations.
But they're not stupid. Like,
but they're not stupid. No,
they're not. It's not like we're talking, it's not gibberish.
No.
But, another problem here, and I think you just, really touched upon it very well. Mm-hmm. All right, so we have Trump on 4chan saying that he's going to arrest so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And everyone's saying, all right, you're LARPing. Like, it's
right. Yep.
You're out of your mind, prove it. And the guy just vanishes, and it just becomes a conversation for 40 minutes. So immediately, this guy posts something, Q posts something, and it's like, well, why should I give this credit? And I'm talking from the viewpoint of CNN. I'm talking to the mainstream media who are saying, well, why isn't Q giving us some, of this? We have to discredit every other source because if it's not us, it's no one. And I feel as though that was working for a really long time.
Right.
Especially through the Obama administration. And now it's fallen apart over the past 2 or 3 years. Thanks to
because the light has been shed, on why, wait, you're telling me that the media has an agenda? You know what I mean? And people they have not, excuse me.
And it's like, no shit, right? It's like, you're kidding, right? You're really not questioning this day to day. And you say to yourself, wow, I really wasn't questioning it, at least me.
Right. No. And wake up. Most of us weren't. And still many aren't. And that's the thing that, again, why we're out here writing about this stuff, why we're helping to, give Q that extra platform. And that's what is fascinating. And again, when you think back to how they're executing this thing, it's amazing. Because they started they were looking for a very, I think, looking for a very specific person to plant the seed. Because again, I had never even really heard of 4chan. I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. And I had been following certain, sort of conspiracy theories, I guess you call it, which is the term that the CIA actually created to help discredit anybody that was questioning the death of Kennedy, the assassination of Kennedy. The CIA then implemented this term and they started sort of giving negative connotations to it, so that anytime somebody would bring it up or ask it, oh, you're one of those people.
I spoke to a number of people who've written books about the JFK assassination, MLK assassination, actually on my other podcast on theodd.com. And we're talking, people who are scholars, people who are to this day still saying, but it's an eye-opening thing. And that was decades and decades ago. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to. We all know it.
It's so important, and it gets cast aside. And then so again, as just an example for any listeners out there that are, questioning what I'm saying is valid or whatever, just ask the questions, like why was he assassinated? And this also happened to be less than a week after he was saying he was going to destroy the CIA and shatter it into 1,000 pieces. A week later, he's gone. And so, people have moved to accept that the government was involved, but it's almost as if they don't care. And so again, we've lost that connection piece. I don't care because it was 50, 60 years ago, but you should care because the reason that it happened was to stop what was coming. And so when you have that level of sort of, fascism, which is really what it was, is deep state fascism, you have to look at your life currently, and just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So it's a big thing. And so that's how I got involved. And I just sort of started to, track these things, and you're reading it and you're like, well, wow, what is this? What is this thing? And people will be on there and they'll be, say, no, prove it. Well, they go on and they just continue down the path. And one of the big things that Q has said is the future proves past, right? And basically what that means is they'll say something now and it will come true in the future, which then makes the statement that happened in now. So if we're thinking, parallel timelines here, future me will be proven right about what current me says.
Right.
But it doesn't happen until that point. And so we're seeing a lot of these things happen, where you can't discredit it. And one of the things that I've tried to do, in helping aid people to come from this sort of an infancy level of questioning to, whoa, this is real, is to help compile posts in which we've found these proofs. And we say, hey, dude, how did they do this? Because this is exactly what happened. And now you have this connection piece. And once they see that and they try to disprove it and they try to, then they're like, okay, I can't discount that as random coincidence. And that's how they work, and we're at this point now where it is impossible. The other day, Q posted 3 times within 0 seconds, or 1 second rather, so under 1 second, as Trump had tweeted. And so you say to yourself, well, that could be totally random, right? Well, so I took it a step further, and I'm like, well, how random is this? So what I did was I broke down the number of seconds in a day. And there are, I think it's like 86,400 seconds in every single day. And so to have a timed post within 1 second of a tweet is a 1 in 86,400 chance of it being coincidence, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you do that 3 times, it's not just 3 in 86 there, it's like 260,000. You're not just multiplying. It's actually 86,000 times 86,000 times 86,000, which is something like 1 to the like 88th power. It's simply impossible. It's impossible. So you have all of these different evidentiary things that help people come to this realization, like, hey, I should take this person or this thing seriously.
Now, one of the things that people I don't think expected to be as triggered about are memes. Memes are, we all know what memes are. It's, the little kitten or something like saying, like, hang in there. So one of the things that's a meme, but I think it's such a powerful meme, and I have to wonder if it was if there's more to it, is the NPC meme, which is non-player character.
Yep.
Which personally I think is like win the Nobel Peace Prize. Like it is so witty, and it hurts. Like I can feel the pain of the people who it triggers, right? I mean, it's really that good.
Yeah.
And it really, really pissed off a lot of people. And I don't, for something so simple and something
right.
Why do you think that in particular triggered so many people?
Well, I mean, just like anything, it's rooted in truth, and if people if people get upset by something, it means that there's an element of, this hits home for me. Right. And I remember, when it first came out, and I totally agree with you. It's
my favorite thing,
every single time. I can't resist a good NPC meme, even a bad one. They're all good. It's like
the worse they are, the better they are.
It's like exactly. It's like steak. There's no such thing as a bad steak. But it's fascinating. I think truly, again, when it first came out, I remember Twitter was talking about banning people for using the meme because it dehumanized.
They did, though. They did ban people.
Did they end up doing it?
Yes, again, thousands of accounts.
Seriously?
Yes.
Seriously. We're talking about, a meme, and that is now considered, hate speech or whatever.
Right.
And again, I think the reason that it angered so many people is exactly the reason that it was created, right? If you can't look outside of your paradigm, and outside of your ideologies, then you are nothing but a non-playable character. You can't cognitively digest the point of the opposition.
It's genius.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And I think it just short-circuited these folks that are, and initially my favorite parts is when they'd be infiltrated early on, and you'd have these these people that would go to rallies dressed as the NPC meme,
right,
saying things like "Orange Man bad," and they didn't get it. The people directly around them,
and they're agreeing with them.
Understand.
Yes, Orange Man bad.
Yes. There's one in particular. This guy was there for like 8 hours. Nobody, in one of those faceless gray suits with the face painted on it. Nobody harassed him because they didn't get it.
Right.
And so I totally agree. I think but it's rooted in truth. And I think it proves the point that it was meant to be created for.
Right.
And whenever you have something like that, like it's very rare, it's like the actual literal thing that it's supposed to be. Like Mitch Hedberg is, former comedian. He's like, what I'd like to see someday? A forklift carrying pallets of forks. Right. It's the one thing it was meant to do.
Right. Every angle of it works.
It's perfect. Yeah. And so yeah, I think, I think that probably played a big part, in people being like, wait, I'm not a robot. I'm not a robot because CNN says I'm not a robot, right? Like, you just proved your point, but whatever.
Now, would you recommend any particular place or website to follow Q's releases? I personally use, QMAP.pub, QMAP.pub.
Yep.
Is that it? Is that the headquarters?
That's the one I find to be the best.
Well designed.
It's a mirrored site. You've got a lot of additional resources there that people usually don't even know. You have the ability to toggle on whether the president tweets or not. And so you can align certain things like timestamps and see, when this happened. Is there a correlation with it? Is there not?
Well, who's behind this? Is there something going on here? I know what you were saying. You don't believe, you don't trust anyone.
I don't. Yeah, I don't. But I speculate that particular site, which is so, like, the production value of is amazing.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't. This is not us. This is not a content management system. This is a custom created piece of code. Right. That is solid. I don't know who.
Very solid.
Also, right now there are 256,162 IP addresses, at least online.
Okay.
Let's say 100,000 of those people are just whatever. They're just, they have no interest in what's going on.
Sure.
Tremendous number to be anywhere at one time.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's money here.
Yeah, well, but they don't have advertising. You know what I mean? So it's not like there isn't an agenda that I have been able to find with that particular place, because it's not, it's just I don't get pop-ups. I don't get ads on the side. So I speculate that there is a connection between the Q team and that particular website, especially when you think back to things that Q have said, which is, learn to read the map. Well, what's it called? It's called the Q map. You know what I mean? So there could be, I don't know. I speculate that there's a connection, but that's just my own personal opinion.
Right. No, I was just kind of curious. I mean, I do always get a little nervous when I see something as polished as it. I mean, it's a beautiful site. I mean, this, if you were to say, like, Facebook's top coders were sourced to create this, I would really not be that surprised. The aesthetics are there.
Yeah, it's and good question everything.
Yes.
That's I will never advocate against that or shoot something like that down. Again, what you have to say is say, well, what would be the nefarious purposes of doing something like that? Well, could be to track people, right? But they're already tracking us,
right?
So it's not like that's something that is, necessary. And that's part of the things that Q has identified with us. Things like Facebook, Twitter. They're tracking our movements. They're tracking everything we say, everything we upload, everything. Our GPS coordinates. They're doing things with the application. Even when it's not on.
Sure.
And Facebook has even admitted as such. Twitter changed their terms and conditions. I think it was last November. No, it was a year ago, actually. It was a year ago in November, where it said that they could now track people and their internet activity outside of Twitter. So which places are you going to get your information from? Oh, okay. We'll just go ahead and, put you on this little list over here that says you're one of those people, right? And so clearly there's algorithm manipulation that has happened. It's very flagrant. There's lots of instances in which conservative voices specifically are being censored. They're being shut down. They're being siphoned. And again, lots of video evidence of this happening. So you got to ask yourself, why is that happening? Why is Twitter doing this?
Game?
Exactly, right? If you're Twitter, if you're Facebook, you want the most amount of users possible. But why are you preventing certain voices from being heard? Here's the evidence that suggests that that's happening, right? And once you ask the questions, it becomes very obvious. And I think that people just aren't used to asking those questions. We're just used to getting on and taking pictures of our food, So,
what do you think would happen if President Trump stopped using Twitter?
Oh man!
If he just said, you know what, Don Jr. has a new thing called Twatter, and we're going to use that, and that's what I'm going to use from now on.
Yeah, I would have no idea. I mean, clearly
people would walk away, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you'd have a gigantic, chunk of the population that would be, leaving. You could crush, the whatever the medium is, if that were necessary.
It's pressing the reset button in a lot of ways.
Well, that's
right?
kind of what this whole thing is, right? It's a total reset of a lot of things.
No,
and Q has kind of touched on that.
In the past few years, a lot of things are considered alt-right or racist. Not really racist, but let's say alt-right or the right movement. I'm just going to name a few things that I guess I'm into a little bit that I guess are considered alt-right, even though like I was a Clinton liberal, and I guess hashtag walked away. But we and I did Trump. I did Trump for Trump. I did vote for Trump. And I got way behind him. But shortwave radio, or I'm working on my ham license right now. My son is too. I mentioned he's going to be a Boy Scout, so he's going to work on that. Also, prepping is something I have a certain interest in, but it's considered to be lunatic. I mean, it's considered to be something that is connected somehow to hate speech. I don't know how. And owning a gun, of course, is considered, it's a form of expressing hate. What is your opinion on these type of things becoming such focus for the alt-right? Because you don't hear about liberals talking about prepping but kind of you do, but you kind of don't,
Yeah. Well, I think again, if you extrapolate out from where we are currently, and you say something like, well, what would happen if Hillary Clinton would have won the election, right? And you go through all of these scenarios, you go through everything, you compare it to, Saul Alinsky and his handbook for the socialist state. He outlined all of these different things that said, hey, if you really want to have a purely socialist state, here's what you got to do. You got to control the guns. You got to control the healthcare. You got to create the elimination of the middle class. You've got to create, identity politics, all of these things. They were one step away from completing it. One. And that was gun control. That was it. And so then you take it a step further and you say, let's say she won. And then what happened in October? Oh, that's right. Las Vegas happened, right? And 500 people got shot down. What happens if you have a president now saying we need to get rid of all of these quote unquote assault rifles, which there's no such thing as an assault rifle. It's
right, of course.
And they say, oh gosh, and you have these people that are like, I got to turn my gun in. I got to turn my gun in because it's bad. And you go through this slow drip, which is what we have encountered, is this constant slow drip to the point where we have not noticed the reduction of rights over time or the acceptance of certain ideologies over time. It's just been a slow progression. And you get to this point where you say, oh, dude, now they control everything and I have no way to protect myself. So if you take this a step further and you look at it and you say, well, why does the quote unquote left not focus on things like, prepping, for instance? Well, because in their mind, they have been taught to believe that nothing is wrong. You have no fear. Don't worry about the government. We're here to protect you. That's why you're voting for us, right?
That's why we have FEMA.
Exactly. It's exactly right.
It is. That's our protection, right? I mean, those are the people who are supposed to take care of us, and when it goes down. Precisely.
And so, once you believe that, why would you ever establish a secondary plan? Because that's fine. They're good. Don't worry about it. They're good. Child Protective Services, don't worry, they're good. There's these things that we have just been taught to believe blindly and never question. And how dare you question? Because if you question them, you're crazy. You're one of those JFK,
conspiracy theory. Yeah.
And so I think it's directly tied to that. Whereas, people that do these things have broken that matrix. They've established themselves as, well, that's good. I think things are fine, but I'm going to do something just in case. Right. And when you look at it just as a microcosm of, the greater difference between liberalism and conservatism, the conservative is conservative. They set stuff aside. They they plan for things. Liberals more of, oh, let's carpe diem.
Right.
Let's live for today.
I have Amazon Prime.
And so, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I was saying I have Amazon Prime. I'll just order it.
Exactly. Just
one day, come on.
Figure it out. Don't worry about it. And it's not that one is right and one is wrong. It's just the difference. And so, but that particular ideology to convince people that you don't need to have these plans, you don't need to be thinking, more than one day in advance. Well, let's look at our life. Do you own a home? Probably. And if you do, you probably have a mortgage, right? So when do you get to own that actual home? Well, as long as you don't refinance, as long as something else.
As long as you don't need any other money. Yeah.
Exactly. It will be yours in 30 years, but don't worry, you'll still have to pay taxes on it. And it's all these things that we have been just conditioned to accept as good and that's just the way that it is. What do they say? Death and taxes. The only two inevitabilities. Well, that's not true.
Is that what Q is hoping to achieve? Is the awareness of all of these things that we've become conditioned?
For sure. I mean, I can unequivocally say that is a part of the plan for certain. Because again, that's what is happening. If you look at the greater community of these people that have followed this and really, embraced it, we question everything, and it's an annoyance to a degree. Like, well, what's in this burger? What's really in this burger?
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. Pink slime.
Yeah.
Remember that? I mean, there was a
Absolutely.
debacle for a few weeks.
Right. It's Soylent Green. But
don't tell him what's in the Soylent Green.
You have this, this movement that thinks this way now. And again, there's certain levels in which you should probably operate at versus continuing to drill down, because like I said, you can question everything. But once you start looking at your life in this lens, things become very clear, and you become very aware of who has an agenda and who doesn't. And that, I think, is at the root of what this is again, looking within yourself, searching for, quote unquote God, finding the answers and what is real.
What do you think needs to happen, though? I mean, at some point, we need there to be a crescendo, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there will be.
I guess that's where I'm kind of, what I'm alluding to is, what do you think, in your opinion? I know this is your opinion. What needs to happen to get people to say, you know what, take this job and shove it type of attitude, and step up and say, look, you know what, I've had enough. Yeah.
Well, one, I guess I can't really. That's a tough.
I know. I'm putting it all on you too.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to have just a simple answer. I mean, there is no simple answer, really, right?
There's not. It really depends on the person. It depends on what it is that they're seeking. I know that a lot of folks within this movement are very adamant about things like vaccinations, and questioning of what that is and how that works, and what is the purpose? What are they really trying to do? There's others that are very focused on something called NESARA, which is essentially the elimination of debt, the personal elimination of debt. Others are very adamant about locking up all of these, locking up and or killing all of the corrupt people that have enslaved the world. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on the individual, but I think what they're ultimately looking for, is that one, like, proof positive. And I continue to tell folks that, like, there's been hundreds, there's been so many things that have happened, but too often those get overshadowed by the, they haven't made any arrests. And you're like, actually, there's been thousands of arrests, but you haven't paid attention because none of them are named Hillary.
Right.
So you have to be very cognizant of the words that you say, because they do get heard, and often that will affect morale, that will affect willingness to accept what Q has been sort of giving out, which is this, real substantial hope. Mm-hmm. And for me, myself, personally, I have been able to prove without a shadow of a doubt that Q is legitimate, that Q includes the President of the United States, and that they are benevolent, that they are here to help and not deceive.
Now, has Q released any information that you recall about the possibility that people such as Congressperson Cortez, which has been a very hotbed of information because she's very photogenic,
right,
and she's also very young, and I think it's great. I think young people getting involved in things is wonderful.
Right.
I think that her ideas are touch sophomoric, and I think that they're crazy, I guess, for lack of a better word. A little too extreme in my opinion, but I'm a backward thinker, I guess. So
sure.
Do you think that these people are part of bringing to the forefront this lunacy and making people say, you know what, I've had enough? No,
I
not
do.
You, because I see people pissed off. I live on Long Island, not 11 miles from where the LIC thing was going to be built with Amazon, and Amazon pulled away. A very liberal company pulled away because they were like, "I'm not putting up with you," and that is something that probably would have tripled my house value.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And she's out there saying this. I applaud the company that doesn't pay any taxes. Right. You're in my opinion, you're 100% correct on Cortez. So to answer your question with regards to Cortez specifically, there's something that she said maybe a month and a half ago that got my attention. And it had been sort of not even really in the back of my mind, just I remembered certain things. Mm-hmm. And then she said this, and I was like, wait a second. What did you just say? And she said it was that interview with Anderson Cooper in which she said she was advocating for a 70% tax rate.
Right.
And she was advocating that for the very top. And her words, the verbiage she used was the very, very tippy top. She said tippy top. Now, why is that important? Well, Q has there's been several Q posts in which the term tippy top has been used. And one Anon had asked prior to not this most recent, but the State of the Union address last year for the president to incorporate the term tippy top into his speech. Okay. And it was sort of bypassed, and nobody really thought much of it until a few months later, in which the president was standing outside the White House during their annual Easter egg hunt, and he's standing by a white rabbit who was wearing glasses, so very close to the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland, which is a recurring theme that we see in many Q posts. And he's talking about the White House in a very strange way. He's like, this is a very special place, and we like to keep it in tip-top condition. Some might say tippy-top condition. I'm like, what? That doesn't even make sense.
That's where you're rewinding. You're like, wait, hold on.
Exactly. And so then you go back, and then Q alluded to it and said, hey, did you catch it? He said it. You can't use that in the State of the Union, but he's going to do it in something that's a little less formal. And, oh, by the way, here's a Q proof for you, right? So tippy top has been used by several key figures. Scaramucci has used it. Kellyanne Conway has used it. So it's been a thing. And again, this is not a term that I would associate with an adult.
It's a code word. It's absolutely a code word.
Right. And so when she said tippy top, I'm like, holy crap. Okay. Let me go back and think of the things that she has said and done and incorporate that into what just happened. And so I went back and I remembered a video in which she was walking with Bernie Sanders, and she was in I don't remember where she was, but she got in front of the camera, and this is before she was, obviously inducted or started her job, and she's like, "We're gonna flip this state red." And you're like, "Wait, what?
Hold on." Yeah.
What? And that began sort of the beginning of my thought process, in which I'm like, wait a sec. And you start thinking of all the things that she did. She beat what's his name? Crowley, I think. In that election. This guy was supposed to be the next Pelosi.
Really?
That's how highly thought of he was within the House. He was supposed to take over for Nancy Pelosi, and he got beat by a 29-year-old? What? That makes no sense. It wasn't even that he wasn't liked.
She came out of nowhere, too. I mean, she literally came from nowhere.
Out of nowhere, right? And the things that she has said, things like that with the New Green Deal and the trains across the Atlantic, and these complete, the elimination of cow farts.
But, the train thing was interesting to me because as soon as she released that, we had out in California, them pulling away from the train, saying, look, we have to walk away from this. It's a total loss. And I remember years and years ago, they were, that was the whole thing. There was a whole movement of where the planes were bad, the trains were good. And I listened to a podcast called No Agenda. But they have almost like a morning zoo joke that goes on where they say,
all aboard, train's good, plane's bad.
Right. So it's one of these things where this was an agenda that was going on about 10 years ago.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. And it's so crazy that you have people saying, this is the Democratic Party? Right? And you think of it, you're like, oh, she's just an idiot. Well, guess what? She's not an idiot. She went to Boston University.
Right.
Boston University has a 30% acceptance rate. Okay? So just getting into BU is hard enough. She graduated in 4 years as cum laude. I mean, she's in the top 25% of her graduating class of the top 30% of people that got in. So you're telling me that somebody that's in the very top of her respective class doesn't know that she's in doesn't know that blue is affiliated with the Democrats?
Right. The basics.
Exactly. Right? Things, and once you start to add these things up, and there's a lot, I'm probably on the minority on this particular thought process because, again,
it's out there.
It's out there, but people are so blinded by their eyes and their emotions as opposed to, just the facts.
Do you think she flips at some point?
I think I don't know. I don't know. What, buddy? Hold on, sorry.
It's cool.
Okay, hold on. I'll get you a different one. Yep. Does she flip at some point?
Because the Republicans would love her.
I think my personal opinion is that she is planted. She's a plant that has been put there to delegitimize the Democratic Party, to destroy it from within, to make them seem so incredibly crazy that it splits the Democrats in half.
And it's working.
It is. And it's also working within the actual politics themselves. Again, there was another sort of red flag that jumped out at me was she was out there giving high fives to all of these protesters, left-wing protesters that were protesting Nancy Pelosi as being Speaker of the House.
Right.
And she's out there giving high fives to these people.
Like, this is your team.
This is your team. Anybody that's ever played sports, I was an athlete myself, and that when you're a freshman, you don't start running around making fun of the seniors. You're going to get killed.
You don't go to Boston with a Yankees hat on.
Exactly. You just don't do it. There's just certain things you don't do. And so they're telling her, hey, you got to stop these antics because this is hurting us. Well, that's weird because I think that's what it's supposed to do. And so what do you do with those leftovers, the middle of the road progressives? And then they see things like Trump saying, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to advocate and really, put our thumbs down on these countries that are criminalizing homosexuality. I don't know if you've seen this. This just came out the last couple of days.
No.
And they're targeting countries like Iran, right? Iran's been in the news quite a bit.
Sure.
Nice runs. Who have outlawed gays. They throw gays off buildings out there just for being gay. And Trump's coming out right now and they're saying, no. Any of these countries that are doing this that's a human rights violation, and we're gonna stop that. What do you do as a gay person? You're not gay, but as a gay person who you identify with the Democratic Party just because they are anti-homophobe? But wait a minute, I'm confused because he's trying to help us.
I mean, we were told he was going to be Donald Trump was going to be rounding up the gays. Yep. Let's call them the gays. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, I have no issue with gay people. Like, I don't care what people do.
Exactly.
I'm all for. I've worked with. I have people in my family who are gay. I love them. I have no reason to dislike somebody based upon who they go to bed with. I don't care. And and it's just one of those things where we were told he was going to be driving around in a white van, probably it says free candy, basically rounding up, gay people and putting them in like concentration camps. But it's what happened to that? I mean, it's
the exact opposite. So they've taken these approaches to really extend that olive branch, which has been the sort of the beacon the entire time. It's just that people have been so emotionally, hijacked that they only believe what the television is telling them to believe. And they can't get over this because of all these things that their eyes see. And again, that's why they say seeing is believing, but that needs to change a little bit. You have to start to look at the facts and question. Right. And once you start to do it, it becomes, like I said, it becomes very, very clear. And it's a wonderful thing to, for me to be a part of, to be able to, look around and see all of these people, engaging in dialogue that probably would never happen. And it is transcending your sex. It's transcending your religion. It's transcending your race. It's not about that. It's about us as a country, as a world. Yeah. And it is taking effect, and it is going off like crazy because people are now waking up to the authoritarianism that has been instituted in every country on this planet. And you're seeing things like Venezuela, for instance, right? They're changing over their regime because, again, that it failed. The people are revolting. They don't want it anymore. In Brazil, they just elected a nationalist as their president. You look at what's happening in France. I mean, the Yellow Vest movement, it's huge. They are sick of it. But you don't see this on the mainstream media. So you have to ask yourself why. Why don't we see this on the mainstream media? Well, it's because the mainstream media is controlled by a very, very small percentage of people. There's only 6 primary media outlets that own everything. They own everything. And I include Fox in this. I always make sure I add that.
Oh, yeah, Fox is definitely
mainstream media. And what, I always say this because you do have people that, maybe they voted for Trump, but they still look at this as a political issue because it's not. But they look at it, stupid liberals. This is what they want. And you're like, dude, you gotta soften that language just a little bit because that isn't what's happening. That's what they want you to have. They want us to be fighting with each other. And so
I'm still the same liberal that I was when I was 18 years old. It's just, it seems like it's the world that changed. The
world changed.
I still have the same sympathies and I'm still going to help out the homeless person. I don't.
Absolutely.
It's weird. Like the world really changed around us.
Big time.
And I'm not going to say none of us changed, but I don't think my focus has changed.
And to identify that is huge, because people will take that path and they say, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I would look at it myself. I'm probably more liberally minded. I have focused more on, things like the environment, for instance, than I ever did. But that's because of an increase in my spiritualism, my spirituality. And it was just, I have more empathy for the homeless and less about money, But again, I was always a conservative. I actually consider myself a libertarian, but that's just, and it has shifted. There's been a shift, and some people have taken the hard line and some people haven't. And to be able to identify that change is enormous. So kudos to you, man. That's big.
I do think, though, that my liberal friends, I have a lot of friends who, I keep using the word liberal, but they're left-leaning.
Sure.
They have really changed. Well, maybe they become more artificially sympathetic towards these movements that really aren't movements. And yeah, I think that
the limousine liberals.
It's a very strange time. But I just have one more question. I just wanted your opinion on it. The movement of cryptocurrency. Do you think that this plays right in the middle of all of this?
That is a tough question.
Because it touches upon it. It pisses off the entire globalist movement and changes everything. But at the same time, I'm not that
well. So if you look at it from the sense of I touched on things like slavery here, right, and what that means. Well, we are financially slaves. We're financially enslaved by the banking financial world, and that is the result of the Federal Reserve centralized banking. All of these things that they will put interest rates on purchases that you have been told you have to have, and as a result, you're told, oh, you need this new car because it's the next best thing, and blah blah blah, and it's that consumerism mindset. Before you know it, you're worth more dead than alive, and so the world, for the most part, has been enslaved by this institution.
Right.
And this constant inflation of a fiat currency, right? So you have nothing. You have a paper dollar that is worthless. So the only value that it has currently is the result of it being used as the petrodollar, the value in which oil is traded in. And if for some reason Saudi Arabia decided, you know what, we're going to actually shift to the yuan, the Chinese yuan, as our primary means for trading. Well, what would happen if that happened is you have all this paper currency it has no value, it's got no tangible value whatsoever, it's just paper. That would then basically be reintroduced into circulation. So because it was previously occupied by the oil trade. And now they don't have that. So you have all of this excess paper that would be reintroduced. So then it just becomes a simple, design of supply and demand. You have an increase in supply, therefore the demand goes way down. So your value of the dollar is shot. So what I think is going to happen is I think we will be going back to the gold standard, in which the dollar will be equivalent to an actual physical piece of gold, in which it will never ever really inflate, because there's only a limited amount of gold. They're not creating gold, right? It's not something that you could just all of a sudden introduce into the circulation like you can printing paper.
Sure.
And so your value of your dollar then normalizes, which essentially destroys inflation altogether. It just becomes almost like a purely free market type situation, in which you trade you trade goods and services for this thing, this physical thing. And it's possible that crypto comes into play as a result of that, because it does also bypass the banking systems. And all of these things do go back into why we are enslaved to begin with, because you have a financial banking system that has, manipulated the value of the dollar and the, currency in general. So that I personally think we will see the gold standard return. And I think we'll see Nicera as well. So
do you purchase gold? Is that, it's kind of a personal question, but
I won't answer that personally,
Okay,
but
no
I would advocate everybody to purchase gold. Yes.
Now, what about prep? we touched upon prepping.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend a certain amount of prepping, like days of, or weeks?
Personally?
Yeah.
No, I don't think anybody has anything to worry about. And I've been pretty adamant about that. I'm very anti fear porn is what I call it,
right.
Which is, this thing's going to happen. The border wall thing. We got to go down there. We got to fight. No, you don't. That's why we have Q. That's why they're telling the story so that we can help people when that transition comes, so that they know there's nothing to be scared of.
Excellent.
Right. And so prepping, I would always advocate it, because you never know what's going to happen. You could have a tornado, and
right. It could be a minor thing to be prepared for. Like I went to Hurricane Sandy here.
Yep.
And we had 3 weeks of no, 13 days of no power.
Right.
But, so CT, where would people be best to find you? I mean, I don't know if you want to promote your Facebook page. I think people should go and listen to what you're or rather read what you're posting, but
yeah,
I don't want to push it out there unless you want to.
No. I will never self-promote, because it's not me. Right.
Gotcha.
I follow one person, online, and I don't really follow anybody else, because I just find that coming to my own, ideas on something and having almost, I just like to say, it's the universe guiding me, to something organically, is the best way for me to learn. But people are more than welcome to, find my Facebook page or whatever they want to do.
I'll put a link to it in my show notes.
Yeah, sure.
It's facebook.com/CT Tyler, TYLERZ at the end, Tyler's.
Okay. I didn't know that, but that's cool.
Yeah. No, that's my alias. I'm going to make a fake one. No, okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's right.
No, but it does have a Z at the end. So, but yeah, CT, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
It's
absolutely. A real eye opener. I am new, like I said, to all of this. Not all of this, but I would say to Q. And I think your kids are getting like, get off the phone, Dad!
That's usually what happens.
But I do appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And anytime you want to come back on and talk about anything, I know you don't like to self-promote, but we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think that you'd be such an excellent candidate to create a Q for Dummies, and I would just hope that you take that to heart and possibly create something like that. But of course, you don't.
Hey, it's good ideas are, they're never in short supply. So, I think it's definitely something that I hope people out there are considering. I think it's a great idea. But no, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Like I said, if I have an opportunity to be able to lend insight into helping spread the message of what Q is, I'm going to jump at that chance every single time. And I guess the only other thing that I would say is just encourage people to ask questions. Like enter this arena with an open mind. Hopefully I don't sound like a crazy person. I don't consider actually. So funny story. I've been able to logistically or logically prove that I'm not crazy, because a crazy person says things that they think are normal that are actually crazy, whereas a sane person says crazy things and knows that they're crazy. So therefore, as a result, ipso facto, I can't be crazy, because I know how crazy some of this stuff sounds.
Dude, but everything is crazy right now.
It is. And I think, acknowledging that and accepting it and entering into the arena with an open mindset and just saying, hey, what is this thing? I need to factor this in and I need to consider it. And I'm going to look at it with an open mind, I think, is the best medicine.
It's funny. I just thought of what is the most normal thing I could say right now that sounds crazy. And it's like, oh, I drink faucet water.
It's like, oh no,
what the hell's wrong with you? Are you crazy? Really? I mean, that's nuts, right?
Right.
But CT, thank you again so much. I really appreciate it.
I know you're angry that I left you behind. thousands of people, you're the only one. You are my stars, my sky, my moon and sun. I'm not confident, it seems, when it comes down to my dreams. You had me thinking I was going crazy. Two separated souls, past lives never known. Eternity seems short, but life is long. But darling, don't you just stand there. I have changed, I don't lie. I can prove it, something fierce, all dry. And with that you lock it all. You won't be leaving this time. You won't be leaving this time.